There is a man and a woman, they're alone, they're husband and wife. No one is watching them. No one cares about what they're doing with each other. No one can see them except Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So even if they agree to do something which is not allowed by Allah, Allah is watching. So wattaqullah, fear Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, wa'alamu annakum mulaqūh, and know that you will meet Him. You will answer in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said that when a man and a woman are together, meaning a husband and wife, even the angels, they go away from them. And the angels, out of haya, they do not stay, because the angels are supposed to record everything. The angels do not stay and do not watch, but rather out of haya, they go away, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala informs them of whatever was uttered, whatever was done, and they record it in that way. So, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is watching. وَاتَّقُوا اللَّهَ وَاعْلَمُوا أَنَّكُمْ مُلَاقُوهُ وَبَشِّرِ الْمُؤْمِنِينَ, and give news to those who are believers. وَلَا تَجْعَلُوا اللَّهَ عُرْضَةً لِأَيْمَانِكُمْ أَن تَبَرُّوا وَتَتَّقُوا وَتُصْلِحُوا بَيْنَ النَّاسِ وَاللَّهُ سَمِيعٌ عَلِيمٌ. And do not use Allah's name in your oaths as an excuse for not doing good. So someone, two brothers are having a dispute, so one brother gets involved, and while trying to make peace between them, he gets accused of being biased, and sometimes you're the peacemaker, but people say, you are the troublemaker, you are the one that did this, and that person, he feels so bad, he says, you know what, wallahi, I will never do this again. Or some other form of good, especially reconciliation. A person maybe has a bad experience and he says, wallahi, I will never do it again. Now Allah is saying, don't use the name of Allah as an excuse for not doing good. If you made an oath saying, wallahi, I will never do it again, then this is an oath that should be broken. How is an oath broken? Basically, if a person made an oath, which is now you have a better option. In this case, fidya, a kafara, has to be paid for that. Here Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying that if you made an oath and now you have an opportunity to do good, then do the good and break your oath. This is also one of the stories behind this, is that one of the stories in another ayah is about Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu, who used to support one of his relatives, Mistah, and financially sponsor him and take care of him. But Mistah got involved in the slander of Aisha radiallahu anha. And he received the punishment for slander. And Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu, he took an oath. He said that I'm supporting this man and his family, and he is involved in slandering my daughter. I'm not going to spend a penny on him. And he swore by Allah. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala also that don't swear by Allah on doing this if it's something good. And he says, and also forgive. Don't you want Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to forgive you? So Abu Bakr radiallahu anh said, yes, I want Allah to forgive me. And he basically broke his oath and continued to sponsor and support Mistah. So don't use, if you have taken an oath to Allah that you will not do something that you should do, break your oath and do what you should do. لا يؤاخذكم الله باللغو في أيمانكم ولكن يؤاخذكم بما كسبت قلوبكم والله غفور حليم. Allah will not hold you accountable for unintentional oaths. So does anybody here make unintentional oaths? Some brothers, every sentence begins with wallah, right? And kids pick it up as well, where they start to say, wallahi, wallahi, I will not eat this sandwich. Like, why do you have to say wallahi here? But people, they start to, so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that if you didn't really intend to make an oath, but you were just kind of being loose with your speech, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will not hold you accountable. But still, it's not a good habit. It's not a good habit, and a person who swears often is often someone who's trying to get confidence. And it might be the sign of someone who is lying, but using the oath to kind of earn the confidence of the people. So it's not a good habit to do so, and we should not allow the children to use this easily and freely. But if someone while they were talking, they said wallahi, and they didn't really intend to make an oath by the name of Allah, but they just said it. Allah says Allah will not hold you accountable for unintentional usage of the word. But if you really intended to make an oath, you really said, yes, I swear by Allah, I will not do this. Now, if you need to do this, now you will be held accountable. وَلَكِنْ يُؤَاخِذُكُمْ بِمَا كَسَبَتْ قُلُوبُكُمْ. What your heart really intended, Allah will hold you accountable. So if still you need to break an oath, you have to pay a kafara. What is the kafara of breaking an oath? Kafaratul yameen. Number one, or three options. Feed a slave, free a slave, or provide clothing for 10 poor people. And this clothing should be sufficient and average of what you wear. If not, or another option, all three options are there, or feed 10 poor people one meal. Feed 10 poor people one meal, or you could also feed one person 10 meals, an average. If a person is not able to do any of these, in that case, they have plan option B. All of these are option A, but you can choose any one of them. If none of them are possible, then a person will fast 3 consecutive days. It cannot be one day, then skip a day, then one day, then skip a day. No. 3 consecutive days to make up for the oath that was broken. لِلَّذِينَ يُؤْلُونَ مِن نِسَائِهِمْ تَرَبُّصُ أَرْبَعَةِ أَشْهُرٍ. Those who swear not to have intercourse with their wives must wait for 4 months. So this was another, you could say, common cultural practice. Husband and wife have a heated argument. Husband says, I swear I will not touch you ever again. If he makes this is called ila. And if they make this, now what is the matter? What do you think? Now they made an oath. If they say, I swear by Allah, I will not do this. Or they simply make a declaration that they would say that you are haram to me from here on. In this case, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, what do you do in this case? Allah says you have 4 months to decide what do you want to do. If you took an oath, you need to break your oath if you want to be with her, pay the kafara, and normalize your relations. But 4 months is what you have the time to decide if you want to continue this marriage or not. Meaning, you can't keep your wife and not fulfill her rights. After 4 months pass, now the moment of decision has come. This is your deadline. You can decide earlier, but this is your deadline now. Either you need to keep her in your marriage and normalize relations, fulfill her rights, pay the kafara of your oath. Or you need to let her go. If you're like, okay, yeah, I'm done with her, then in that case, you have to release her. You cannot, what's called mu'allaqa, you cannot keep someone hanging. I'm not going to divorce you, and I'm not going to fulfill your rights. It cannot be. This is haram in Islam to do so. So, فَإِنْ فَاءُوا, if they change their mind, فَإِنَّ اللَّهَ غَفُورٌ رَحِيمٌ, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is certainly all forgiving, most merciful. Essentially what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling us here and in other ayat, that the purpose of an oath should not be to prevent you from something good. Even if you made an oath when you should not have, now do the good and break your oath. So, in the Arabs, this used to be considered a type of divorce. This was a type of divorce, but in Islam, it is not divorce automatically. It is not considered divorce automatically, but it is kind of like a separation period, even though you may be living in the same house, but you say, okay, well, I'm going to stay away from you. So, وَإِنَّ عَزَمُ الطَّلَاقِ, so 4 months pass and they decide, or they decide that they want a divorce, then in that case, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is indeed all hearing, all knowing. Allah knows what you're doing. If you're playing any type of games, Allah knows that. وَالْمُطَلَّقَاتُ يَتَرَبَّصْنَ بِأَنفُسِهِنَّ ثَلَاثَةَ قُرُوءٍ. ولا يحل لهن أن يكتمن ما خلق الله في أرحامهن إن كن يؤمن بالله واليوم الآخر وبعولتهن أحق بردهن في ذلك إن أرادوا إصلاحا ولهن مثل الذي عليهن بالمعروف وللرجال عليهن درجة والله عزيز حكيم. He says, divorced women must wait three monthly cycles before they can remarry. So here is the concept of the iddah, the waiting period. So here there's actually some disagreement among the scholars, and this is why it's important to understand that sometimes a person may just read the Qur'an, but if they don't know the backdrop of it, they might not be completely clear as to what is the deeper meaning of it. So thalathat al-quru is something where there's disagreement of the scholars as to what it means. If divorce occurred, there is a period of 3 cycles that is considered the waiting period. Now, are the 3 cycles the cycle where she is in her bleeding part of the cycle? Or is it the part of the cycle where she is in the pure part of the cycle? So, again, there are 2 opinions of the scholars. Some scholars say that 3 periods must pass. 3 periods of bleeding. Other scholars say that it's the 3 periods of purity that must pass. Okay, so again, that's a detailed discussion. That's one of the things that if some couple comes and they want to divorce, this is one of the things that we discuss with them. And to clarify, divorce should not be pronounced while the wife is in her period. She should not be divorced during that time. It has to be done in the time of the tuhur period, which is the period of purity. At that time, that it needs to be pronounced, and you need to basically remember or at least record what time it occurred, what date it occurred, what was the state. Sometimes I've had cases where they say, okay, Imam, we want a divorce, help us. So I have to ask them, okay, is she in her period right now? If she says yes, okay, we have to wait until this is over. Then you will pronounce the divorce. So that way, it's all clear. So if divorce occurs, if divorce is pronounced, then there is this waiting period. During this waiting period, the wisdom of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is that she cannot remarry during this time. No one can propose her during this time. During this time, she should not engage in any activity that will raise doubts about her. That, okay, she should not go outside of her house. No non-mahram men should be coming to her house, and she should not be going where there are non-mahram men. Why? Because during this time, if she's expecting, now remember, DNA and all of this stuff is a modern thing. But for the vast majority of humanity, you basically would know if her period stopped, that was the sign that she was expecting. So if during this time, she got divorced from her husband yesterday, and na'udhu billah, today she's out with, with other non-mahram men or whatever, people are going to say, well, she's expecting, but who is the father? What happened? So nothing, no remarriage during this time, no proposals during this time, no mixing with anyone, no going out in public where this could happen. All of these restrictions are for the waiting period so that it would be completely sure that this woman has not been with anyone, with no sign of any impropriety there. So if she's expecting, it would be very clear the father is the husband who divorced her. Now during this time, if she's expecting, she should not hide, but she should declare. Why would she want to hide? What do you think? If she hides, she just stays quiet, doesn't tell anybody, waiting period finishes. Number one, if the husband knew that she's expecting, maybe the husband would reconcile with her for the sake of raising this child. She doesn't tell anyone, so husband maybe doesn't reconcile. Now that he doesn't reconcile, now she's free from this marriage. She can move to another city, she can move to another country, and she will basically have sole custody of this child, and the husband may not even know about it. This is not allowed in Islam. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَلَا يَكْتُمْنَا وَلَا يَكْتُمْنَ مَا خَلَقَ اللَّهُ فِي أَرْحَامِهِنَّ إِن كُنَّ يُؤْمِنَّ بِاللَّهِ وَالْيَوْمِ الْآخِرِ. If she believes in Allah in the last day, she should not hide what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created in her womb. So, وَبُعُولَتُهُنَّ أَحَقُّ بِرَدِّهِنَّ فِي ذَلِكَ إِنْ أَرَادُوا إِصْلَاحًا. And their husbands reserve the right to take them back within that period if they desire reconciliation. Okay? Remember, so once divorce is pronounced, the husband still has a right to do ruju', to take her back, saying, look, I want to reconcile. And this is a one-way thing, meaning that the wife might say, no, I don't want to be back with you. But the husband says, look, you know what? I want to return, I want to cancel the divorce. It's not really a cancellation, but I want to basically stop that process of us ending this marriage, and I want us to try to make it better. This is only in the hand of the husband. The wife does not have to agree to it. The wife does not have to agree to it, but the husband says, okay, you know what? I'm the one that pronounced the divorce, and I'm going to reconcile. Okay, we're going to stop that. We're going to work this out. Now, Allah says, in aradu islaha. If they want reconciliation, if they want islah, meaning a person should do this if they really want to make something better out of it. It shouldn't be done as saying, oh, you know what, if I divorce her, she's going to be free, she's going to be enjoying life, she's going to get remarried to someone, I cannot see her happy, so you know what, I'm going to keep her tied to me, and I'm going to not be good to her as well, but at least I will keep her tied. No, that's not what should be done, and that's not what Islam says that you should be doing this ruju for. It should be done in aradu islaha. In aradu islaha. Now, what do you say if a husband says, I want to take you back, but the wife says, I don't want to be back? I don't want you to do ruju. Then what? What do you think? What is that? So I'm talking about in our context, right? We're living in America. We're living in, even elsewhere, but I'm saying especially over here. If she doesn't want to be with you, try your best to reconcile. But if she doesn't want to be with you, you can't force anybody to be happy. And you can't force anybody to give you happiness. It's best to preserve the family unit. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it will come in the next ayah, which is that there comes a point where if you stay together, you're violating the limits set by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You're going to be abusive towards each other. You're going to be abusive towards your children by being abusive towards each other in front of them. If that's what the situation is, then not every situation can be salvaged. We want to try to salvage every possible situation. But at the same time, this idea that there is no divorce or that it's never good, it's not Islamic idea. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us these rules about divorce because He knows in His wisdom and in His knowledge that sometimes that is the better way out. That's mercy from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That okay, if not working out, don't make each other's lives hell. Don't make each other's lives hell. And what we were talking about in the Jummah khutbah is that sometimes it's the men who break the heart of their wives. It's the men that broke the hearts of their wives by doing whatever they did. And once that heart is broken, it's very hard to put it back together. It's very hard to put it back together. You may have her body, but you may not have her heart and soul in it. Sometimes you say, you know what? Yes, we made mistakes. This is where we are, where my wife, she says her heart and soul is gone from this marriage, but our kids are still young. At least we need the bodies to be together, living in the same house in order to raise these children a little bit older. Whatever it is, it has to be done with the spirit of reconciliation and trying to make things better. It shouldn't be as a punishment for one another. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says again and again, wattaqullah, fear Allah, have taqwa of Allah. Meaning, you can have the law, But you could, if you want to be, corrupt, you can always use the laws to your advantage in one way or another, misuse them, and try to oppress someone else with it. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that their husbands reserve the right to take them back within that period if they desire reconciliation. وَلَهُنَّ مِثْلُ الَّذِي عَلَيْهِنَّ بِالْمَعْرُوفِ. Now this part, it is translated, so here you see the translation on the screen, that women have rights similar to those of men equitably. This is one translation. Another translation is that just like men have rights, women also have some rights of their own. They're not the same, but they have some rights of their own. A more precise translation is وَلَهُنَّ مِثْلُ الَّذِي عَلَيْهِنَّ بِالْمَعْرُوفِ. It is referring to the rights of women and the responsibilities of women. Meaning that the woman, وَلَهُنَّ مِثْلُ الَّذِي عَلَيْهِنَّ بِالْمَعْرُوفِ. That just like they have responsibilities, they also have rights. Okay, meaning we're not saying that the women have the same rights and same responsibilities as the men. Men have their rights, they have their responsibilities. Women have responsibilities. We all recognize that, right? Every husband says, my wife is not fulfilling my rights. But Allah is saying that while she has responsibilities, she also has rights. وَلَهُنَّ, la is for, alay is on her. She has responsibilities, she has rights. وَلَهُنَّ مِثْلُ الَّذِي عَلَيْهِنَّ بِالْمَعْرُوفِ وَلِلرِّجَالِ عَلَيْهِنَّ دَرَجَةً. And the men have a degree over them. Okay, so this ayah, the way you interpret it, some modern people don't like it. They say, why is Allah saying that men have a degree above them? Okay, but here we would say that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying that men have a higher responsibility, right? Every woman, no matter how feminist she is, how modern she is. When I say feminist, I mean not the positive sides, but the negative, the modern, this toxic ideas of feminism, that women should be able to go bare-chested, just like men can go bare-chested. That type of feminism. They will all say, yes, men have responsibilities towards the family. So a general rule that we all know and agree is that if you have more responsibility, you also have more privilege because of that, right? You have the more with power comes responsibility. You get something good, you also get some responsibility with it. So you can't have it both ways. You can't say that men have more responsibility, but they have less rights. Or women have more responsibilities and have less rights. But rather, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that the men have a degree over. Now, what is that degree? Remember, we talked about it again in the Jummah khutbah, is that in Islam, men are the leaders of the family. The leader of the family has a higher responsibility towards the family, also has rights from the family. And when we start talking about family reconciliation, we talk about that the leader has to rectify themselves first. You start from the top. You start from yourself. You lead by example. You can't say, I'm going to be bad, but you have to be good. But rather you start. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that in this case, who was given the right to give the divorce? It was the man. And who has the right to stop that divorce process? It is the man. Women have their rights. They also have their responsibilities as well. But in this case of divorce, we were talking about the men has this. Wallahu azizun hakim. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, indeed Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is almighty, all wise. At-talaqu marratan. And inshallah we'll just introduce this ayah and we'll stop. At-talaqu marratan. The divorce is divorce. So here the literal meaning is that talaq is given twice. But the literal meaning is not the intended meaning. The intended meaning is talaq can be stopped twice. It can be retracted twice. So if a man declares talaq once to his wife, he has a return policy on that. If he pronounces a talaq second time, he has a return policy on that. If he pronounces a talaq the third time, there's no return policy on it. So we always advise people that even if you're going through talaq, don't even go towards the second time. Only do the talaq once. Let her waiting period finish. She will be free from this marriage. You will be free from this marriage. The vast majority of people who go through divorce among the Muslim families that I know, the Muslim cultures, vast majority of them, when emotions calm down, when they get a break from each other, they look at that the grass is not greener on the other side. 4 months, 5 months, 6 months later, they start to realize that we made a mistake. If they did the divorce the way that we advise them, only pronounce one divorce, let her waiting period finish, she's free from this marriage, you're free from this marriage. If they regret and they want to be together, all they need to do is they need to do a new nikah and they can be together again. But now they have 2 divorces left. If they already did 2, they only have 1 left now. So this is the right way of doing divorce, and it should not be talaq, talaq, talaq. This is called the talaq bid'i. It's an innovation in the way of giving talaq. The Sunni talaq, Sunni meaning the way of the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, is that a person gives talaq once and wait one period. If things are still not working good and he really, really wants to end it, he will do a second talaq. And it may not necessarily be the month later. He might reconcile with her, but 6 months later, things are not working out. He pronounces a second talaq. During the waiting period, they reconcile, takes her back again. Then they live together for some time. They have problems again. Now, the third time, they do talaq. It should be a long process. Why? Because when you get married, do you ever meet someone on the spot and say, let's go and get married right now? You don't. What is the usual minimum time that people take to talk to each other, get to know each other, understand who they are before they get married to someone? What would you say in our time? How many people know that someone met someone on September 1st and they were married by September 30th? None. 2 months? 2 months? 2 months is very rare. Usually, I would say 3 to 6 months. Would you agree or disagree? Because you're getting married. You want to do due diligence. You want to plan for it. You want to make sure all the dates and everything is right. The family is involved and all of that stuff. So the process of marriage in our time and culture, we take that long. But when it comes to divorce, they have one argument, talaq, talaq, talaq. This is not the way of Islam. This is not the way of the Qur'an. This is not the way of the Prophet. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says you can retract a divorce twice. After that, فَإِمْسَاكُمْ بِمَعْرُوفٍ أَوْ تَصْرِيحٌ بِإِحْسَانٍ. Then the husband must retain his wife with honor. If you're going to take her back, reconcile with her, live with her with honor, or separate from her with grace. Meaning, no need to make each other's lives hell, whether you're living together or leaving. Do it. If you're going to separate, separate with grace. If you're going to live together with honor. Inshallah, we'll stop here and we'll recontinue next week, inshallah, from where we stopped from this ayah. And we'll discuss the issues of divorce are very, very important for us to understand. And this is one of the areas where there's a lot of ignorance, because most people are scared to discuss divorce. They think that if we discuss divorce, we will get divorced. But actually, it's the other way around. If we discuss and learn the seriousness of divorce, and the Prophet said, there's no joking in marriage, in divorce, and in freeing a slave. You can't just say talaq and say, well, I didn't really mean it. I mean, there could be a case where somebody was like, there are some issues which could maybe discount a divorce, but this is not a joking matter. It should not be done. In fact, every brother here should remove divorce from your vocabulary. If you're going to do it, you say, we're going to go to an imam, and I have a document, and we basically write it down. Because you know what? Saying is easy, writing is difficult. So you say, if I do it, I will do it with an imam in writing to make sure that it's done right and that what I'm doing, I really intend to do it. Otherwise, otherwise stay away from it. So inshallah, we'll stop here, and remember that today at 10 o'clock, right? 10 o'clock we have a blood drive. We still do have some spots open. If you're interested, inshallah, please donate blood. Donating blood, no relation to marriage and divorce. Okay? So that's a separate topic. That ended. Now we're talking about donating blood. So don't say like, Imam, you're trying to make some type of jokes about blood and all of that stuff. So we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to grant us all proper understanding. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to grant us happiness and peace and stability in our houses. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make our families the coolness of our eyes. Our wives, the coolness of our eyes, and us, the coolness of our wives' eyes. That when we come home, when we see each other, it should be that moment of relief and happiness, and not a moment of stress, not a moment of avoiding each other, like, oh, here we go again. It should not be like that. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to grant us all the tawfiq to follow this deen the way it's supposed to be followed. Subhanakallahumma wa bihamdik, nashhadu an la ilaha illa ant, nastaghfiruka wa natubu ilayk. It is now 12 minutes, inshallah. Please pray 2 rakat, 4 rakat, and then inshallah, let's go out for breakfast.